What's going on, y'all? So, as you know by now, the Mission Ready Men podcast is dedicated to men and the issues that confront men in this society. So, we haven't gotten into a lot of political commentary. Um, if you followed me before, you know that I had another podcast called the Liberty Cast, where we did was political commentary. That was before I came to know the Lord and got saved. But when here on Mission Ready Men, the Mission Ready Men podcast, when the political bumps up against the biblical, well, we have to talk about it. And it really goes beyond the Bible. Um, the political class, the government, they hate Americans. They hate everything that Americans and America once stood for. And if you think that's an extreme position, well, I have evidence to support that assertion, and I'm going to show it to you right after this. So let's get after it. As I mentioned in the open, I had a podcast previously called the Liberty Cast, and our primary focus was political commentary, and even more narrowly focused than that had to do with the Constitution and our Second Amendment rights. And red flag laws are anti-constitutional, and they basically flip due process on its head. I would even go so far as to say they completely throw out the concept of due process. They take away your rights first, and then you get to appeal them, possibly. And red flag laws, not only are they anti-constitutional, not only do they throw out the idea of due process, but they get people killed. And take the example of Gary Willis. I talked about Gary Willis and his killing on my podcast back when it happened. And just to recap, the Anne Arundel County Police in Maryland, um, they acted on a red flag order and barged into Gary Willis's house at 5 in the morning. And he heard the commotion and he went to confront them and resisted. He had a firearm and they shot him. They killed him. He was exercising his Second Amendment rights to protect himself and his home, and the agents of the government killed him. And then there's Duncan Lemp. And again, this was in Maryland, Montgomery County. Montgomery County SWAT executed a no-knock warrant on Duncan Lemp's home at 4:42 in the morning. And the reason why, allegedly, is because there was an informant, apparently, who pointed out to them that he was posing on an Instagram post with a firearm that was supposed to be an illegal assault weapon. And we're not going to get into the whole assault weapon thing right now. But it turns out after they killed Duncan Lemp and examined the weapon, they found out that it was actually legal. And they claimed in their statement that he confronted them and caused them to use deadly force to defend themselves. Now, Lemp's family says that he was asleep in his bed and the SWAT team opened fire from outside the home. Now, considering that Duncan Lemp was 21 years old, this happened at 4:42 in the morning, and his bedroom is on the first floor of the home, I'm leaning towards the family's version of events. Now, we have many other examples, and this last one I'm going to talk about has to do with the ATF. And the ATF is one of those agencies that exists only to justify its existence. Now, I just recently watched Waco, the story of the ATF's massacre of the Branch Davidians back in 1993. And I already, because of my Second Amendment advocacy, I already had a negative view of the ATF, and this miniseries reinforced that negative view of them for me. And the intervening 30 plus years since this happened, the ATF has not done anything to improve its reputation. So on March 19th of this year, Brian Malinowski had his home raided by the ATF, again acting on a no-knock warrant early in the morning. I'm not sure of the exact time. And so they executed this warrant for minor firearms violations. Apparently, he got on the wrong side of some regulations while selling guns at a gun show. They're not quite clear as to exactly what those violations are at this point. Um, but they, in all the reporting, are described as minor firearms violations. Not like he was a major firearms dealer and that he was responsible for so many people getting killed by the weapons that he sold or anything like that. No, minor firearms violations. So I don't know if Mr. Malinowski was a Christian or not. I hope that he was. I pray that he was. But when he heard someone, and I pray that all these people who have been killed at the hands of these government agencies had their souls right with God and are now with him in heaven. I hope that's the case. But when Mr. Malinowski heard someone breaking into his home, he acted in the way that God intended for a man to act. He gathered his weapon and he went to confront the threat and protect his wife. He exercised his Second Amendment right to engage the intruders, and as a result, he sustained life-threatening injuries, and then he succumbed to those injuries 3 days later on March 22nd of this year. He died trying to protect his wife. Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Because what it turns out that they had been surveilling Mr. Malinowski. They had several opportunities to stop him outside his job, outside his home for weeks. And they chose to wait until he was asleep so that they could execute a no-knock warrant and startle him out of bed. Almost sounds intentional. Anyway, I could go on. It almost sounds intentional for all these cases, doesn't it? Now, I could go on with other examples of the ATF and other law enforcement agencies executing these no-knock warrants and killing people unnecessarily, but I think you get the point. The government pretty much cannot stand anyone over whom they cannot exercise total control. Total control is what they're after. So Christians, people who are vocal about their Christian faith, people who are vocal about exercising their Second Amendment rights, their constitutional rights, those people are at the top of their list. And then farmers, people who grow their own food, raise their own meat, or people who only eat what they can hunt and grow, those people are pretty high as well. And the people the people in charge, the people in the government who hate us think that they're gods. They believe that they are the supreme beings and we must bend the knee and swear fealty to them.
Submission. Now that's a bit of a problem.
But if you don't, if you refuse to bend the knee, their hatred of you can manifest in any number of ways, not the least of which is sending armed agents to kill you. And it's not just with firearms. It's not just with firearms. Mark Houck, a pro-life activist in Pennsylvania, had his house raided early in the morning. I don't think it was like pre-dawn or anything like that, but it was early in the morning. His wife and kids were with him when the FBI basically kicked in his door. And had he had he been armed when that happened, I have little doubt that they would have killed him and possibly even his wife and children, because the FBI pointed rifles at his wife and children. And it's not like he was a violent felon. He was praying outside of a baby killing clinic, and some guy started harassing his 11 or 12-year-old son. And so he stepped in like a good father would and pushed the guy, and he fell down. And the police who responded to the incident didn't even bother to press charges, didn't arrest him, nothing. And I believe the state got involved, and they declined to pursue the matter. But then the feds got hold of it. And Merrick Garland and the DOJ decided that this guy needed to be held accountable for protecting his son. And they confronted him. They told him they needed him to come in. He agreed to turn himself in. He was ready to deal with it. And instead of taking that route, they decided to try to make an example of him and raid his home. And of course, he was eventually acquitted of all charges. But that is the length to which they will go if you disagree with them and if you're vocal about your disagreement. So keep in mind, they hate you. They absolutely hate you. Now, I mentioned it a few times earlier, and the Second Amendment says that a well-regulated militia, being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. There is no equivocation. There is no ambiguity in that statement. Shall not be infringed is as clear as it can possibly be. Yet, there are tens of thousands of laws and regulations and rules around the ownership of firearms. I believe the number is upwards of 30 between state, local, and federal jurisdictions. Over 30,000 laws. Unless you're a violent convicted felon or have been adjudicated mentally unfit, there should be absolutely no barriers whatsoever to you owning a firearm. None. Guns are tools. Guns are tools just like any tool you would find in a toolbox. On that note, let's take a look at something that I found quite entertaining recently. Check this out.
Hi, my name is Lily Tang Williams, and welcome to my Live Free or Die state. Actually, I am a Chinese immigrant who survived communism. And under Mao, 40 million people were starving to death after he sold the communism to them, and 20 million people died, murdered during his Cultural Revolution. So my question to you, David, is that can you guarantee me, a gun owner tonight, our government in the US, in DC, will never become a tyrannical government? Can you guarantee that to me?
There's no way I can ever guarantee that any government will not be tyrannical.
Well, then the debate on gun control is over because I will never give up my guns. Never. And you should go to China to see how gun control works for dictatorship of CCP.
Wow. This Davy Boy got destroyed. His answer to that one question, the first part of it, his answer anyway, effectively ends the gun control debate in this country. And in a sane country, it would be over. Absolutely over. Finito. Now he went on in that answer to yammer about, well, it was a deflection of saying that he was sorry that Mrs. Williams had to go through that, and he doesn't want to see anything like that in this country. And he claims he doesn't want to see anything like that in this country, and I'll talk about that in a second. And he talked about how FISA and the Patriot Act are more likely to lead to a tyrannical government forming than the confiscation of guns. But what he fails to acknowledge, what all these people fail to acknowledge, either purposefully or out of ignorance, is that in China in 1935 and other countries where this has happened, well, in 1935, China instituted gun control. In other countries have instituted gun control prior to their communist takeovers and massacres of millions of people. But in 1935, China instituted gun control, confiscated all the guns, disarmed the Chinese population. And that's why he was able to massacre 20 million people. Davy Boy may claim that he doesn't want to see that happen, but that is the logical conclusion to everything that he's advocating for. That is the logical conclusion to his raison d'etre. All right, so let's bring this tugboat back on course. What does any of this have to do with biblical manhood and being a mission-ready man? Let's take a look at what the Bible says about defending yourself. Now, keep in mind, I am not a biblical scholar. I'm not even trying to play one on Rumble or YouTube. But I have thought about this quite a bit over the years. Exodus 22 verse 2 says, "If the thief is found breaking in and he is struck so that he dies, there shall be no guilt for his bloodshed." So if you kill the thief breaking into your home, there is no sin. You have not committed murder in the eyes of the Lord. And Jesus says in John 10:10, "The thief does not come except to steal and to kill and to destroy." The thief breaking into your home or trying to rob you on the street does not have good intentions. They are there to steal your stuff, to kill you or your family, to destroy your property and your life. So as the as the leader of your family, as the shepherd, as the sheepdog, your job is to protect them against that enemy. So if anyone breaks into your home, you have the right, you have the responsibility, you have the duty to defend them against that aggression. And that includes agents of the government that hates you. Now, some of you might say that I'm sounding like a libertarian or an anarchist or an anti-government extremist. I'm not an anarchist, and I am not a libertarian. I don't agree with a lot of what the Libertarian Party platform is, but they have it right when it comes to property rights and the non-aggression principle. And the non-aggression principle basically says that nobody has the right to threaten you or commit violence against you, and you have the right to defend yourself against a violent attack with violence against that assailant. There's a lot. There's a little more to it than that, but that's the gist of it. And we can talk about that another time. But to get back to the point, 1 Timothy chapter 5 verse 8 says, "But if anyone does not provide for his own, and especially for those of his household, he has denied the faith and is worse than an infidel," or an unbeliever. Now, provide does mean a number of things. It could mean provide for financially, putting food on the table, spiritually, and physically. Now, physically protecting your people, I don't know. We could get into the original Greek of Timothy's letter, and I don't know if when Timothy was writing this, if he meant to include the concept of physically protecting your family and your loved ones. Like I said, I don't know. I'm not a Bible scholar yet, but I'm certain that based on other passages in the Bible and what God requires of us, that he would not be pleased if we just allowed someone to take advantage of us and our families in that way. Because if that were true, Jesus would not have told his disciples in Luke 22:36 to sell their cloak and buy a sword, which was basically the gun of that era. And I mean that in the sense that it was the most efficient way to protect yourself against someone. It was the most efficient means of defending yourself. So if you take nothing else away from this discussion today, understand this: the government is not going to solve your problems. In many cases, the government is the source of a lot of your problems. Now, obviously, the ultimate source of all of our problems is the devil and his rebellion against God. And the government and many people in the government are his minions. So there's that. But if Trump wins, he is not going to make everything better instantly. There are unelected permanent bureaucrats in DC who will still hate you if Trump wins. They hate Trump, and they will still hate you if Trump wins, and probably even more because you voted for him. Now, he may be able to do a little something about the criminals that they keep letting out of jail or failing to put in jail in the first place, because those people, those criminals are the left's foot soldiers, let out on the street to keep you in fear, and their efforts to disarm you are to keep you dependent on them. So if you live in one of these blue areas where they make it nearly impossible for you to defend yourself with a firearm, and they're letting these criminals out on the street, that's not an accident. They're doing that on purpose to keep you in fear. And we just saw this in Australia not too long ago. Australia took away they disarmed their citizens. You can still get guns in Australia, but they make it very difficult and almost impossible to legally carry a firearm concealed in Australia. And so just recently they had a madman with a knife go on a rampage in a mall where he stabbed and killed several people, including a mother and her little baby, who he also stabbed. This is not an accident. This is absolutely real. But here's the thing. We have what they hate. We have the Lord God on our side. So whom shall we fear? And we have the Constitution on our side, the Second Amendment to which acknowledges and secures our God-given right to defend ourselves against anyone who would seek to do us harm. Anyone. Anyway, folks, I'm out of time. I will try to do better the next time. I hope that you got something out of this today, and I hope I made you think about things in a different way. Let me know in the comments what you think so we can discuss. But until next time, let's get after it. Hey everybody, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to hit like and subscribe and leave a comment down below. Let us know what you think. And head over to facebook.com/missionreadymen and join the community. We'd love to hear from you and interact from you there. And follow us on Instagram at 7armors. And if you like this shirt or any of the others that we've worn, please head over to 7armors.com and check out all the gear we have there. And we look forward to seeing you all in 7 Armors gear. Take care, everybody.